This is for Palestine, Ramallah, West Bank, Gaza. This is for the child that is searching for an answer. This is not just a war over stolen land. Why do you think little boys are throwing stones at tanks? And we'll never really know how many people are dead. They drop bombs on innocent girls while they sleep in their bed. Israel is a terror state, they're terrorists that terrorize. I'll testify my television, televise, I'm telling lies. How many more resolutions have to be violated? How many more children have to be annihilated? This is not a war, it is systematic genocide. But whatever they try, Palestine will never die. Free, free Palestine, free, free Palestine, free, free Palestine, free, free Palestine.
Hello, I'm Chris Williamson, and this is Palestine Declassified, where we investigate the Israeli regime's global war against solidarity with the illegally occupied people of Palestine. In today's programme, we'll be looking at the recent imposition of sanctions on PressTV by Western governments. Later in the show, we'll be investigating how the Zionist movement has responded to this show, which has been on air now for almost a year. I'll be talking to experts on this subject after this special report by Latifa Abu Chakra on the sanctions against PressTV.
PressTV is under attack. Canada, the EU, the US and the UK have all issued new sanctions on PressTV as a whole. Some have also sanctioned specific broadcasters from the station. Though spurious reasons are given for the sanctions, the reality is that the West fears that their lies about Iran will be exposed. First, Canada sanctioned PressTV as an entity in October. Then the EU weighed in, imposing sanctions on a number of individuals associated with PressTV over alleged forced confessions of detainees following the recent US and Zionist backing of riots in the country. In reality, there have been no such broadcasts. The sanctions imposed by US Treasury's Office of Foreign Assets Control, OFAC, target senior personnel of Islamic Republic of Iran Broadcasting, IRIB, and of the English-language PressTV network, including senior journalists. OFAC alleged that IRIB had broadcast hundreds of forced confessions of Iranian, dual national and international detainees in Iran. The West has been gunning for PressTV for many years. The UK broadcast regulator fined PressTV £100,000 in 2011 for broadcasting a short clip of the confession of Mazia Bahari, a journalist who had been arrested as an alleged spy. PressTV refused to pay the fine. Its license to broadcast in the UK via satellite was revoked in January 2012. A key reason for targeting PressTV at the time was that it featured British dissidents like George Galloway and Ken Livingstone, who were willing to tell the truth about the British role in the illegal invasion and occupation of Iraq, and about the struggle of the Palestinians. In 2014, Bahari created a new citizen journalism website called Iran Wire. Its website was designed by a UK company called Small Media, which is known to be a front for CIA media operations. Unsurprisingly, US propaganda assets such as Masih Ali-Najad had been prominently featured on the site. In announcing the sanctions, the US government also laughably accused PressTV of not being objective, of making false and baseless accusations, and of being involved in mass suppression and censorship. But these are all qualities generously exhibited by both covert CIA propaganda operations and the mainstream US media. PressTV provides a counterweight to the empire of lies presented by Western media. It is no surprise that the US wants its propaganda assets in the region not to be challenged and targets PressTV as a part of its ongoing regime change operation against the Islamic Republic.
As always, we're joined by our resident expert, David Miller. David's an academic and a former professor at Bristol University, and he's a leading British scholarly critic of Israel. David's also the co-founder and co-director of the lobbying watchdog Spinwatch. Our guest expert today is Roshan Saleh. Roshan is the editor of 5 Pillars, a Muslim news website based in the UK. He's been a journalist now for almost 25 years, having started his career in local newspapers before moving into TV journalism with London Weekend Television. He's also worked for Al Jazeera, Islam Channel and PressTV, where he was the head of news in London for 5 years. Roshan is the author of a book entitled Confessions of a Muslim Journalist, and we spoke to Roshan earlier. Welcome to the show. David, now then, PressTV started in 2007 and was banned in the UK by 2011. What do you think that says about freedom of expression in Britain?
Well, this is a country where we're filming this show. Is the UK. It's supposed to be the mother of democracies and the sort of a founding of liberal freedoms like freedom of expression. Of course, that's never really been the full story. But in the last 20 years or so, we've had a closure of the space for free expression on a whole range of issues, but especially in relation to questions of imperialism, in relation to war and foreign policy. And so, you know, we see now an increasing constriction of the space for freedom of expression. It's over 10 years ago since PressTV's license was removed over a farcical investigation in relation to a broadcast of a journalist, an alleged forced confession. What was really going on there, of course, was an attempt by British foreign policy interests to constrain the possibility of criticism of their actions and their involvement effectively in war crimes and human rights abuses.
Well, we asked Roshan about how PressTV had previously featured stalwarts of the anti-war movement, but also right-wingers too. For example, prominent journalists Andrew Gilligan, who went on to become a member of former Prime Minister Boris Johnson's team, was a presenter on PressTV. And Roshan told us how things have now changed.
So before I joined PressTV back in 2007, 2008, I was wondering myself, will this channel air different views, being an Iranian channel? But I was quite surprised because, you know, they were having left-wingers on, they were having Muslims on, they were having right-wingers on, and quite frankly, they were having people whose views I didn't particularly agree with on the channel. So there was a definite plurality of views. There was even anti-Iran criticism from some of the guests. How have things changed? Obviously, since PressTV was censored and banned on social media and different satellite platforms and attacked by the mainstream media here in the West, obviously it can be a bit more difficult to get guests from certain points of view. But I don't think that's for the lack of trying. I think PressTV would still air those guests because it's committed to different opinions. But I think it's probably more difficult for them to book those guests.
David, these new sanctions being imposed by Western governments, including the UK and the European Union, specifically single out PressTV. I mean, do you think they're a serious threat to the channel?
Well, the way in which the sanctions will work out will be seen. I mean, there are specific sanctions on PressTV as an institution, and then there are specific individuals in the senior part of PressTV, and indeed journalists who are specifically named as having their assets vulnerable to being seized, etc. So it seems unlikely that their daily life is going to be constrained because they don't live in the UK or the EU or in Canada or America. But of course, it might have make it difficult for PressTV to operate in certain places. Certainly, it might have a knock-on effect in relation to social media and the like. So, for example, Google or Twitter, etc. But you know, really, what's going on here is an attempt to stop the way in which PressTV can challenge Western notions. I mean, you see here the voice of the voiceless is the slogan which PressTV uses as a kind of corporate identifier, and you know that's quite a good slogan for a developed world in the West, where actually the voiceless, it's well known, do not have a voice. Voiceless in this country, in the UK, as well as the voiceless of the rest of the whole world. You know, so there's a sense in which this is an ongoing war to try and stop alternative voices. And they're incrementally ratcheting things up, but they're not being successful so far in shutting down the voice of the voiceless.
Mm-hmm. Well, we asked Roshan about the allegations that Latifa referred to in her video, where it was claimed that hundreds of false confessions were broadcast by PressTV.
Well, I don't know what has been going on in Iranian jails, or I'm not Iranian, I'm not in Iran. So the simple truth is I don't know. But when that's the case, surely you investigate and you get one person's point of view, the Iranian authorities' point of view, and the alleged victims' points of view, and then you try and search for evidence. None of that has actually happened. What's happened is the Western authorities have decided to take the word of one side over another side, and that has led to justifications for social media bans, satellite bans, sanctions, etc., etc. And I just think that's a flawed process. When you do an investigation, do it properly.
David, the example that was quoted in the video about the journalist Mazia Bahari was from over a decade ago. I mean, what's he doing now?
Well, the interesting thing about this is that this is the key example that they use. They say, oh, this is an independent journalist who was tortured and his forced confession was given without his consent. And you look at that story and you think, well, that's interesting. Now, what is he doing now? Now he runs Iran Wire, which was set up with help from Small Media, an institution which is based in this country in the UK, but which is known to be effectively a front for the CIA. And Iran Wire is known to be effectively a front for Western propaganda interests. So he, whether he knows this and has done it deliberately or not, I don't know. But certainly, effectively, Iran Wire is a Western government propaganda operation, and you can see that from the content of it, along with various other Iranian channels which are run by, for example, the Saudis or by the Iranian opposition forces. There's a huge effort at international broadcasting into Iran to try and foment revolution there, and that's partly the context of trying to censor PressTV, because it gives an alternative to the lies which are pumped out daily by these propaganda networks.
Yeah, no, indeed. Well, Roshan then told us what he made of the US claiming that PressTV lacked objectivity. I mean, we asked him if he thought it was because PressTV gives a platform to groups like Hamas and Hezbollah, which he'd referenced in an op-ed, actually, for The Guardian in response to a campaign against PressTV as long ago as 2009.
So obviously PressTV is an Iranian channel, so it will reflect the Iranian point of view to a certain extent, and there should be no surprises there. Just as the BBC and the French channels and the Qatari channels and the Russian channels will reflect their home state's point of view. And I think what PressTV does is it doesn't deny that. It's proud of being Iranian, and it's honest about this is an Iranian channel that is going to try and be fair to the other side and accurate in its information. And I think viewers will appreciate that. They're not trying to hide anything. I think where the hypocrisy comes in is when you have a channel like the BBC, which is clearly a British state broadcaster, but which tells its audience that it's fair, impartial, balanced, etc., when in reality it's just disseminating British propaganda.
Well, we're just going to pause there now for a moment to watch this report on how the Zionists have tried to attack this show.
Why is the Zionist lobby afraid of PressTV, and what has been the effect of the Palestine Declassified show on them? PressTV has long been a target of the lobby. There have been objections to a long list of radicals and dissidents who have appeared on the channel, including Jeremy Corbyn, Ken Livingstone and George Galloway, seen here denouncing the removal of PressTV from the British airwaves.
They're free to do so. Our crime at PressTV was not only that we were telling the truth that some, indeed most, other broadcasters were deliberately concealing, but we were becoming more and more popular, which is why you're right to show the many different ways that it will still be possible to see PressTV in the United Kingdom.
Naturally, the lobby were all over this. The Community Security Trust was to the fore in denouncing the channel. The CST claims to fight anti-Semitism and extremism, but actually runs point for the Zionist regime. Palestine Declassified was launched back in February 2022. Since then, we've done around 50 episodes. Many of our shows seem to have outraged supporters of Zionism. They've tried a variety of techniques to erect a cordon sanitaire around the program. We've been denounced on social media by the Zionist troll network, coordinated from war rooms in the Zionist entity, the US and the UK via government-created app act.il. We've been targeted by the Community Security Trust in collaboration with social media giants, having us banned from YouTube and having the personal Twitter accounts of the show presenter and commentator labeled Iran state-affiliated media. The Zionist troll groups have tried to have people who appeared on the show banned from performing or speaking in the UK. Our resident commentator David Miller and presenter Chris Williamson have been prevented from speaking in various parts of the UK by Zionist bullying and intimidation. We've been attacked by the Zionist so-called left. Namod, a group presenting itself as opposing occupation, has smeared the program as anti-Semitic for having described Odessa in Ukraine as being founded as a settler colony by Catherine the Great, an easily checkable historical fact. Palestine Declassified has also been smeared by the allegedly left-wing group Judas for describing the easily checkable fact that Zionist groups exist in the UK and many other countries. We've been regularly smeared in the Jewish Chronicle and the Jewish News for factual reports on Zionist extremism. There is no doubt that this works. People are scared off. They won't tweet about the program or mention it on other social media. But it's also a testament to the work that's been produced that there is so little actual rebuttal of the research and the investigations which have appeared on the show. Sanctions or not, Palestine Declassified will keep broadcasting cutting-edge investigations on Zionist crimes worldwide and on the resistance to them in Palestine and elsewhere. Watch this space.
David, what is it that Zionists fear so much about PressTV?
They fear the investigations that we do. They fear the information that we find out, that we put into public circulation. We do research which brings into public view things which are not previously known, and that really does scare them. They have to denounce us. They have to call us anti-Semites or conspiracy theorists, and they have to try and throw so much mud at us that no one will listen. Now, of course, it's not working. People are listening and increasing numbers, but it does make some people scared, and that's their hope, is that people will be scared off by being associated with racism, and it's only incrementally when people realise that some of the things we're saying are true, can be checked, and have evidence behind them, that people say, "Hang on, this is not right," and so that's what they fear. They fear the turn of the tide against their racist ideas.
Can you say something about these Zionist troll networks which targeted you and me and many others who speak out in support of the Palestinian cause and obviously also against the Israeli regime?
Sure. Well, I mean, this is a well-established set of facts. I mean, these are facts which have been reported in the Israeli press, in the left-wing Haaretz, and in the right-wing Jerusalem Post. Everybody knows that this is the case. They run war rooms. They started them in the universities in occupied Palestine, and then they also opened up war rooms in the US and in the UK, where people gather together to spread lies in defence of the interests of the Israeli state. These are state-directed operations, and they've got an app which was created by the ministry itself, and which helps to target who it is they're going to target. They've targeted me specifically, and many other people have been targeted, and they go onto social media using fake IDs, and they create an idea that there's a body of opinion, a wide body of opinion, which is targeting people. Now, the troll network extends further than that. It extends to people in the UK. There are networks within the UK. There are fake IDs. There are some well-known public figures who take part in the troll networks and are connected to it. I've been to conferences hosted by the Israeli government. Have been paid to go to these events, and have been indeed paid by ministries to give speeches at various different academic and other events. This is an actually existing network which coheres by ideology, but which also has money and infrastructure put into it.
So people certainly shouldn't be influenced. Is there a quick way of sort of identifying a troll when you sort of are targeted in that way? I mean, is a sort of quick guide that people
once you've been targeted a few times, you start to recognise the similarities.
Sure.
And once you've recognised the similarities, well, then you need to do a little bit more research, and then you can work out who knows who regularly retweets who, which fake IDs belong to which real people, and those kinds of things. But it's difficult, of course, but it can be done.
No, indeed. Well, we asked Roshan about how this show has been used as a pretext to even deplatform guests who've just appeared on it.
Well, I think PressTV as a channel has been subject to an egregious attack on freedom of speech. And that happened as early as 2012 when it was taken off the satellite platform here in the UK. And I think Palestine Declassified in particular is just, it's a microcosm of that, what's happening to Iran as a country. They're trying to silence the views of Iran as a country. And obviously, PressTV is one of the ways that Iran disseminates its information around the world. And Palestine Declassified in particular is a mouthpiece for the Palestinian cause. And that is something that the Zionist lobby in particular are trying to attack. And that's why they don't want any information which is anti-Israel seeping into the public consciousness, especially here in the West, where, you know, Palestine is still a popular issue, despite the fact that, you know, accurate information about what's going on in that country is systematically being targeted and silenced.
David, the Community Security Trust, which is a registered charity after all, seems to have its fingerprints all over this, doesn't it?
Yes, I mean, it's an organisation which says it's there to combat anti-Semitism and also to fight extremism. But yet it's engaged in trying to push out of the public sphere quite legitimate criticism of the State of Israel. And indeed, it defends extremist Zionist groups and will not talk about them in public. In fact, tries to stop us from examining extremist Zionist groups.
No, curious behaviour for a charity, to say the least. Well, we asked Roshan about the targeting of social media companies being a useful weapon for the Zionists.
Social media used to be a great thing for pro-Palestinians, for Muslims especially, who were kind of sidelined and silenced and didn't feel represented by the mainstream media. And they suddenly found a voice on platforms such as Facebook, YouTube, etc., etc. But I think Western governments in particular, where the big tech is based, they've cottoned on to the fact that this is undermining their mainstream media platforms. And therefore, they have targeted, you know, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Instagram, these massive social media giants in an attempt to silence pro-Palestinian opinion in particular. And therefore, if you speak freely about what's really going on, the occupation, oppression, apartheid that's happening in Israel-Palestine, or, you know, kind of perpetrated by Israel against the Palestinians, then you're going to get silence. And I'm not talking about people who are being anti-Semitic here or lying. I'm talking about just straight facts that they're reporting. Even that kind of information is being systematically silenced by big tech, which are under pressure from the governments which host them. There's no denying that the fact that PressTV has effectively been banned in the West on satellite platforms and on social media. So obviously that has decimated its viewership in the West. And I feel sorry for Western people who are going to be less educated ultimately, you know, and they're just going to be indoctrinated with British state propaganda and American state propaganda, etc., etc. So I feel sorry for them. But ultimately, the West is not the whole world, and PressTV is still available on satellite platforms in Asia and Africa, where, you know, the people of the world live. So these people count just as much as white Westerners. So, you know, it's certainly had a dent. It's certainly an egregious attack on freedom of speech, a hypocritical attack on you know, freedom of speech from nations which, you know, basically pontificate and tell the world how they're bastions of freedom of speech and democracy, etc., etc. But the West is not the whole world, and PressTV continues to be broadcast to people who still count.
And David, finally, what do you make of these putative left-wing groups who seem to have very little knowledge or understanding of Zionist history, do they?
It's very curious. I mean, so these groups are, sometimes they're left-wing Zionist groups, sometimes they say they're non-Zionist, some even claim to be anti-Zionist, and they all say that they're Jewish groups and that they come from that community. But yet they seem to have very little understanding of Zionist history. They get their facts wrong all the time, and instead they target us for being inaccurate or being racist about the Zionist movement. It's a very curious thing. Sometimes they even go so far as to denounce things that we've done on the programme without having even apparently read it, because they get so many of the facts wrong. So it's a very, very curious thing that these are people who come from a Zionist background and who appear to know very, very little about the actual existence of the Zionist movement.
Sounds more like a case of projection, actually, rather than reality. But unfortunately, I'm afraid we are out of time today. I hope you found the programme informative. Thanks to our guests, Roshan Saleh and resident expert Professor David Miller. And thank you, our viewers, for joining us today. The show's now available on Rumble, and our back catalogue's being updated to Rumble as well. You can also follow the show on Twitter, TikTok, Facebook and Telegram. And we'll be back next week with more investigations and analysis on Palestine Declassified. So until next time, this is Chris Williamson saying bye for now.